Exoprimal is Capcom's latest third-person shooter action game, and I gotta say, I actually have a lot of positive things to talk about when it comes to this game. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect going in since I felt it looked a lot like EA's disaster show that was called Anthem, but Exoprimal actually exceeded my pretty slight expectations. It's not really a looter shooter, even though it looks and feels like it should be. However, I think it has a lot of good things going for it so far. Of course, no review of mine is going to be totally positive, cause in all fairness, no game is without fault. But for the most part, I can say that from the many hours I spent playing this game, I actually had a relatively decent amount of fun, and I think that it's a game I would likely spend a good amount of time playing just for fun. Exoprimal is a PvP and PvE shooter made by Capcom, the same publisher behind, of course, amazing titles like Resident Evil. For the most part, I actually didn't even know about Exoprimal before it launched, so I'm not sure how that happened, but I guess the marketing just, didn't come in my direction. Either way, I genuinely had no expectations going into Exoprimal because I seriously had no clue what it was supposed to be. I saw some clips on YouTube, but I didn't really look into it much. I saw it on Game Pass. It was made by Capcom. It includes shooting dinosaurs, so my first reaction was like, sounds cool enough to give it a shot. And that was really it. I just downloaded it, opened it, unsure of what the game was actually going to be about, and I have to say, I actually do like this game. As much as there are some nitpicks I have about it, I think it is in some kind of way great. Exoprimal does have a story that you progress through by playing matches of these war games. The main plot of Exoprimal is that it's in the 2040s and there are interdimensional time portals appearing on Earth, unleashing hordes of dinosaurs and modified dinosaurs called neosaurs. And this is obviously called global chaos. And in the spirit of Pacific Rim, which was all I could think of while playing this game, a company called Ibius Corporation builds exosuits and hires exofighters to fight back against the dinosaur invasion. Ibius also develops an AI called Leviathan, which assists the exofighters. However, Leviathan starts going on a power trip and decides to systematically force exofighters to keep going back in time to a specific date in 2040 to fight against waves of dinosaurs on an island called Bikitoa. You play as your customizable character named Ace, and as an exo fighter, your character is assigned to a team called the Hammerheads, which includes Lorenzo, the squad leader and mechanic, Alders, an engineer, and Majesty, who is also an exo fighter. Alongside the group of humans is an android assistant named Sandy. The first time we see the Hammerheads in Exoprimal, you are on a patrol when your team is suddenly caught in a vortex. You end up in Bikitoa Island in an alternate timeline, and there we're introduced to Magnum, who helps assist the Hammerheads. Basically, your objective is to keep competing in Leviathan's war games in the hopes of uncovering its secret. Now, you unlock cutscenes and story information the more war games you play. For now, there is basically only one real game mode that you can play, which is a 5-team PvE or PvP match in which you fight against dinosaur waves, and your goal is to ensure that you finish all the objectives before the enemy team does. Usually the final match sometimes includes some PvP gameplay, but this of course depends on what the mode that is selected is. If you just hit random, it could be either PvP or PvE. I usually just hit random because I don't care, because I think they're all pretty good. Now, at first you definitely feel as though the game is a bit repetitive, and I'll explain why that is. For the most part, you're on the exact same island the entire time, and the thing is, as you progress in the story and as you level up, that's when you start to notice that there is some more variety in the gameplay. You may start seeing some new sections of the map, new missions, new enemies, and more. The higher your level is, the more you play, the more variety you're gonna get. But that's kind of part of the problem, is because I think if you're just gonna play this game for an hour or something, you might not actually be able to see enough of the game to pass a true judgment on it. At the time when I started drafting this review, I had about 4 hours clocked in, so I can say that you really need to play a couple of hours before you can think, this is what I actually feel about the game. Honestly, one of the things I found interesting about Exoprimal is that it feels like it should be a looter shooter. It reminds me a lot of another game called Anthem, which I did mention at the beginning of this video. Now, I remember making a video about Anthem's fate quite a while ago on another channel of mine. When I booted up Exoprimal, the vibe was pretty similar just because, it's exosuits. However, we all know why Anthem screwed up at this point, so I do want to talk about what I think Exoprimal needs to do to avoid getting canned like that. I'll discuss that a bit later in this video though. For now, I just kind of want to hone in my thoughts about the gameplay first. In terms of exosuits, there are a few classes: assault, support, and tank. Each class has at least 3 suits in it, with the last one typically being locked. You can either play the game to unlock that last one, or you can just buy the microtransactions to get it. I'm not one to jump on the microtransaction train all the time, so I'd rather just play the game to get the in-game currency. I guess in some way it feels more rewarding that way because you worked for it. Some people care about that, some people don't. I found that each class does have its perks and its downsides. Assault is definitely going to be the most popular one, and it's got a good beginner exosuit with the Deadeye suit. There's also Zephyr, Barrage, and Vigilant. These are pretty much what you're going to see the most in your team. Assault focuses on, assault. You attack enemies with as much firepower as possible. The support class are your healers. These guys are extremely vital to a team, I may add, because you need someone to dish out health points. I recommend that if you're in a match and nobody is picking support, you should probably be the one to take one for the team and pick support. Your team is gonna need at least one person playing that role, and I'm not usually a fan of these roles, but for instance, one of the games I loaded into, nobody wanted to pick support, and I was like, well, we need health, so I just went for it anyways. But it's actually quite a good class in this game because you can also paralyze enemies, so it's kind of fun. Finally, you have tanks, which are gonna be your shield focused, smash things a bit type of class. I'm not a huge fan of this one myself in really any game, but I think that tank does have a lot of benefits for a team, of course. Ideally, I'd say a team should have at least 1 support and 1 tank and then 3 assault. I feel like this is just kind of what has worked in the teams I've played in, but your experience could honestly be totally different from mine. One of the complaints I have is that because the game's tutorial doesn't really give you the full true rundown of every single suit and what it does and things like that. Yes, there's a training mode, but you're almost thrust into the game without much experience yet, and so it's kind of hard to figure out how to balance your team. You kind of don't feel like everybody is in cohesion at first. Now, as the game goes, you typically get into a flow and everyone knows what to do, but at first it can be a bit confusing or chaotic, but this didn't really happen often. I feel like the more you play, the more you're getting matched with people who are at a similar, level of playtime to you, so eventually it's gonna work itself out, honestly. You can also unlock things like decals, skins, and mods, and these mods kind of help advance your suit and give you abilities such as moving faster with low health. Decals and skins are purely cosmetic. You can get these by unlocking war chests and achieving things in the game. You don't need to buy the war chests if you don't want to because you're given them as you play the game. In reality, there's cosmetic microtransactions. Again, if you really want to buy them, go for it. If you don't. It's not going to change your gameplay at all. In the midst of the gameplay, you're dished out waves of dinosaur enemies to fight. In most matches, you're also given something called a Dominator, which is a dinosaur a member of your team can control, and you can attack the enemy team with this dinosaur. Now, to be fair, Exoprimal is not really that special of a game, and what I mean by this is that Exoprimal is not super unique, it's not groundbreaking, it's not revolutionary. Some people find it meh, others didn't like it. I'm on the side that enjoys it, but I certainly don't think it's game of the year or anything crazy like that, I find that for what it's worth, there is a good amount of fun to be had in Exoprimal. While you're in a match, you almost get no time away from the action, and it keeps you constantly playing. There's a lot going on at once, and I think that that's a good way to describe Exoprimal. It's chaotic fun. Like I said before, this game isn't really anything special, but it's one of those games I think I just want to keep playing for no reason at all. I just want to play it. I can easily play it for hours without realizing I was just playing it for hours. Every time I load into a match, I want to know what's going to come up next, what new dinosaurs the team and I will face, that sort of thing. It's honestly strange, but as this one person over on Reddit put it, it's addictive. And I think that really sums up Exoprimal. There's not really a lot going on just yet, but for what it is now, it's kind of addictive. You just keep playing in this loop to progress the story, and you're not really bothered by that for quite some time. At least this was my experience with the game. It's an arena shooter where you get a bunch of hordes thrown at you. I feel like it's one of those games you play to have fun and not to expect something sophisticated in it. I always relate that feeling to, arcade games. You don't care if the arcade game is really good or really bad, it's just, can you blast stuff? That's how games like this feel, and I honestly need games like this for when I'm bored of the other stuff I play. Now, if Capcom wants to avoid what EA did with Anthem and not have this game die in a year, then this is what needs to happen. Content. Exoprimal needs more content than just a single game mode. I think its main problem is that its repetitive nature makes it seem like it's lacking. And the second issue is that there doesn't seem to be much of an indication in a variety of gameplay that exists in this game. One of the issues that a game like Anthem had was the fact that it was severely lacking in content releases. And I think that was also an issue with Halo Infinite. A live service model for a video game requires content. Without content, the game is as good as dead. That's why games like Destiny 2 and Warframe are still very active. That's because they have content, and they have constant streams of it too. I know Exoprimal is still in its early stages of existing, but because it can get repetitive fast, I think Capcom needs to give it some more juice so that it has a stronger stake and a higher player retention rate. Unfortunately, as much as I enjoy this game so far, I can't say that I won't burn out from playing the same thing over and over again eventually. So I think this is something that should be worked on relatively quickly into this game's life cycle. If I were to give this a numbered score, I would say Exoprimal gets a 7 out of 10 from me. It's not terrible, it's not perfect, it's fun, so I think there could be some improvements, but for now I would say a 7 out of 10 is a pretty fair score for this game. And with that being said, I think I'm just going to wrap this video up here. Comment below if you've tried Exoprimal and what your thoughts are on it so far. If you haven't tried it yet, let me know if you will or if you won't. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoy the video, leave a like and subscribe with notifications set to all. These are just some easy ways you can support the channel. Don't forget to check out our website for gaming news, entertainment, and more. The link to that, as well as all of our other links, are in the description below.